Welcomed in Confidence, where what we share in confidence helps us grow in confidence. Today's episode is a very personal one to me, which is all about friendships, especially friendships as an adult. One of the most disturbing as well as empowering things I saw as I was scrolling through my Instagram feed was there were a couple of posts that gave me pause, and it really inspired the theme of today's episode. I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see a post and it says, the US Surgeon General says that loneliness is the equivalent or as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And that if you're lonely, you have an increased likelihood of stroke by 32% and 29% more likelihood to get heart disease. And I was sort of like, oh no, okay, loneliness as an epidemic. Robert Putnam also did a piece about loneliness is what's driving us apart. And then you see the reverse. Like a lot of the women's empowerment feeds that I follow say, okay, if you have great female friends, you have a 26% lower risk of an early death. Or 77% of high-performing women say that they have a tight-knit circle of friends, or they have a tight-knit friend group. And it really brought forward for me the importance of friendship in our lives. And it's such a personal topic for me because during the pandemic, while my team was making face masks and hospital gowns and we were working around the clock, I, in 2021, went through a breakup, a 6-year relationship that ended. My entire friend group moved out of New York City. My 3 best friends moved to Miami. My other best friend had a baby in November of 2020 and moved to Connecticut. Almost everyone in my life, other than my brother and my coworkers, were still in New York City, and I had lost this important romantic relationship in my life. And I was incredibly lonely in 2021. I spent most of 2021 incredibly sad. And over the course of that year, I had to rebuild all the rhythms of my life. This is also when I discovered BTS and K-pop. So thank you, BTS, for your YouTube channel. But one of the things that I realized is it's so hard as an adult to make new friends or to recreate the rhythms of your life so that loneliness doesn't creep in. And I think so many people during the pandemic experience loneliness. And so today's episode is all about adult friendships, why it's hard to make friends as an adult and how to make friends, make new friends. Secondly, how to rethink your friendship circles. And I do think of them as concentric circles of friendship. And what I did learn during the pandemic is who were true friends and who were ones that my best friend Jane Park calls middle friends. You know, some friends are middle friends. It's like or medium friends. It's like the TV show The Good Place, where there's the bad place, the good place, and then there's the medium place. She's like, some people are medium friends. And the third thing is, how do we nurture and take care of our inner circle? Like, what are the things we need to think about so that we always have a tight-knit friend group to build from? So first, how do you make friends as an adult? Let's get into like why it's just hard in general. I think once we start getting older, and I'm 45 now, and also my friends who are in their 50s and 60s have told me this, as your social circle fragments and widens, it's much harder. So friends are going through certain life stages. I don't have kids, but people have kids. And all of a sudden, their kids, the parents of their kids become their new friends and are part of the rhythms of their life. Or your tight-knit group of college friends, they disperse geographically. No one lives in the same place and city. You know, when there's a proximity, I think there was an old Scientific American study that you would fall in love with someone who lived within 20 blocks of your home. I think proximity, as it fractures, even with technology and social media, it still eliminates some layer of direct connection. And we've got busier schedules, right? In terms of work or parenting or whatnot. And so it just becomes that much harder to find the space to nurture friendship. And in the case of my life during the pandemic, when everyone leaves New York City and goes to other places, you have a structural barrier to friends. I also think there is this idea of instant chemistry versus built connection, you know, and I I think as an adult, it's harder to have that instant connection. You have to actually work at it and build new friendships. And you can't always be vulnerable, right? I think there is this idea of like, do I go first? How much do I share about myself? Am I the person who invites this person I just met to do something? There's this awkward phase of what we may call friend dating. And so oftentimes, how do we turn something like someone we met or a casual connection into someone who becomes part of our friend group? And I want to share with you something that I did. I worked out at my friend Anna Kaiser's studio for many years. And during the pandemic, there weren't these big group classes. There were kind of private sessions or small groups. And one of the things that I did is I said, well, people who go to the same gym or the same dance class or the same workout class, we probably share some similar passions and interests because we ended up here together. We love Anna, we love the workout. And so I decided during that time frame when I was incredibly lonely in 2021 to reach out to two people that I saw often in the studio. They were just two people I constantly saw. I didn't know what they did for a living. I just knew that we loved the same instructors, that we seemed to like the same music. And it's a woman named Jeanette and a woman named Amy. And in the locker room one day, and this is when we all still had to be masked, I just said, hey, should the three of us, we seem to be on the same schedule. We seem to all be working women. Should we, the three of us, form like a little trio group and work out together 3 or 4 times a week at 7 a.m.? And we all looked at each other. We're like, wow, it is hard to make friends as an adult. Yeah, why not? Let's give it a try. And those two women have become friends in my life. They have kids, we don't go out that much socially, but a few times a week, I get a chance to have a connection. We have a conversation. How's work going? What's going on in your life? How's your husband? How's your boyfriend? And it became something that was in the rhythm of my life. And it definitely made the world not as lonely. Like I was so lonely during that year of 2021. And these two women, just through us connecting through our workout schedules, became friends in my life. And we've celebrated Jeanette's 50th birthday. They all came to my book launch. There's this sense of connection. Now, I'm going to talk about later the difference between kind of inner circle friends and periphery friends. I'm not sure I necessarily think of them as in my life, but there's certainly people that I've had brunch with. We would have an after workout meal with, or I've had a drink with, or we've celebrated a milestone together. They have become people who are in the rhythm of my life. And so making a new friend as an adult is hard. There's embarrassment. There's like, I don't want to inconvenience someone. You must be busy too. I think when we get over that hurdle and we find a shared interest or a passion, we're able to create new connection. And you never know where that new connection may go. And so I've been coaching my boyfriend through a lot of his friends have had kids. And so obviously the rhythms of their lives have changed. And we had an active conversation and we came up with a list together of things to make new friends because he's also thinking about as an adult, how do you make new friends? Join something recurring. So for him, we've been talking about, does he join old man basketball league? So a urban professional for age 40 plus basketball league, because that gives him a place to go 2 or 3 times a week where those folks, they might go get a beer afterwards. It just forges a new connection. Maybe a class or a workshop or a group. In my case, I love my workout class, but maybe it's a writing class. Maybe it's a painting class. Maybe it's something where on a regular basis, you're in contact with people who share an interest and you might make a new friend. If you go to conferences or events, I always say everyone needs a conference bestie. And so oftentimes if there is a big conference and someone's sitting alone at a 10-person round table, I will often say, go sit next to the person who's sitting alone and start that conversation. Start asking those passionately curious questions, because then you have a friend for the rest of the conference. You have someone who you can say, oh, hey, they're serving lunch. Should we go grab lunch together? And they might introduce you to people they're with. Extend small invites. So I always say it's not about the big invite. It's the little ones. Hey, after our workout, do you want to just go get a quick 30-minute cup of coffee? Or I'm going to be walking this way. Should we walk together? I think there's lots of small ways. Or I love Adam Grant did a post about pebbling, that penguins pebble, they bring little pebbles to each other. Maybe you share an article or something you've read, or maybe you're on social media and you pebble them with a really funny post that you saw. But I think it's about those small moments, about creating connection, and then they ladder up to true friendship. I also think you can be specific when you admire something or someone. A lot of my new friend group as an adult has come through my workout class, and we do work out together. And it's fun to just have genuine compliments about, wow, you did that move incredibly well. You're incredibly flexible. I'm very impressed with you. And so I would say a lot of adult friendship is hard. It is hard. These might not end up becoming your best friends, but it is those moments where you have a little bit of connection throughout your day or your week where you feel a little bit less alone, and crossing that chasm. I think we also have an obligation to be the one to cross the chasm. So in the locker room, I will often say, hey, I'm Lisa, and we've seen each other a few times. How did you end up here? I think those are some fun ways that you can cross the chasm to building connection. So it may not be your best friend for life, but it might be that connection that crosses the chasm and also decreases the loneliness factor in your life. The second thing I want to get into is not all friendships are created equal. And I love this Tyler Perry quote where he actually talks about there are 3 types of people in your life. And if you think about a tree, he's really talking about a tree. He says there are leaf people, so the leaves on the tree. They're seasonal, they're light, they're here for a moment. They will leave during the changing of seasons. They're not lasting. He then says there are branch people. They're strong, but they have limited capacity and they will break under pressure. And then he says there are root people. They're rare, they're deeply sustaining, and they're the foundation of the tree. They're there for the long term. And I love this analogy because, first of all, it allows us to think about who are the root people in our life, the ones that will be there, that are deep and sustaining. There are some friends, which I love that my friend Jane Park calls them medium friends. They're branch people. They're there, but they're limited in terms of how much you can pour into them, and they will pour into you. And then there are leaf people. And the reason I think about this is oftentimes when a friendship ends or someone moves out of the rhythm of our life, there's a grieving process. It can feel quite sad. Maybe the person moves away or whatnot. And I think you have to think about what part of the tree do they sit in. If they're root people, then you will continue to nurture that connection. They will still be there for you. 2 of my best friends in the world live in Seattle, Jane and Anne. We are not in each other's daily lives physically present. But I talk to each of them once a day or at least a few times a week. And I know that if something breaks down, they will be there to witness that breakdown. You don't need a lot of root people. And it's funny, it only takes one for you to feel sustained. But I think I know that now. Even if geographically we are apart, they are my root people. And so, again, it feels less lonely and I have a deep friendship. I think sometimes, though, there are friendships that are tested and where our values shift or the relationship no longer feels aligned or you're hurt or you're disappointed or our schedules don't quite sync up. And I think we all need to let go of the guilt that comes from letting a friendship fade over time, especially when no one's done anything wrong. And allow that sort of unnamed grief to sit there. But when we say, okay, that person was there for a season, right? Maybe they're a leaf friend or a branch friend. It gives us the opportunity to recalibrate our expectations and not feel so sad about that friendship going away. I think we all need to ask ourselves a question once we've thought about these different groups of people is, have you thought about a friendship that is no longer right for you? When do you let it go? And also, when are we holding on to a friendship out of obligation? I have had a few of these in my life where it's felt like an obligation. And I think that's where you can have just a really open conversation with the person. I recently reconnected with a friend who, for many years when I moved to New York, we were incredibly close, right? There was not a thing we didn't do together, at least a few times a week. This is a person who, after a terrible date, called me and said, I'm standing on the corner of 8th Avenue and 14th. Please get in a cab and come get me, right? This was someone who I have always seen as a root friend. And during the pandemic, the rhythms of our lives changed and we grew apart, and I was incredibly sad by it, really saddened by it. And we recently saw each other for the first time in a few years. And he said, well, you did this thing that was really hurtful to me. And if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't try to clear the air about it. And I said, oh my gosh, I feel terrible about that. And like, we had a really open conversation. It doesn't mean it's going to go back to the way it was, but we at least had that moment to clear the air. I've had another friend that I've gone through a similar situation, super close, ended up moving away, had a baby. We had a bit of a falling out. We reconnected during the pandemic and we're closer than ever. But I think when we have that openness to those conversations and that acceptance, and we realize this is a person who's a root person in my life, life is long. I want us to be in our lives for each other for a long time. You nurture those root people. And then there's some times where you go, that was a branch person, that was a leaf person. In the case of my friend that I recently saw, I hope we continue to be root people, but we'll see, and it's hard. And I want to acknowledge that friendships, the dynamics changing because of life is very, very real. And you'll know your root people when you feel that, that no matter what happens in life, you'll still be in each other's rhythms. Which leads me to my third section, which is all about for our root people, for that inner circle. And how do we nurture them? Because I think friendship isn't static. It evolves as you evolve and they evolve. And it's okay and necessary to reflect on who's in that inner circle, how those relationships make you feel. And it's interesting. I don't think we do this often enough where we can take inventory of our friendships the way we do our romantic relationships or our careers. And I wonder if that's something we should all do because of that loneliness statistic at the beginning. If I think about the amount of effort we put into thinking about our love lives or our career, if loneliness is a huge driver of our own well-being, should we do that same practice for the people who we are friends with? Because who we surround ourselves with, it really matters deeply. And I think putting ourselves in the midst of people who share our energy and really value each other's senses of self, I think that's huge. So what I thought I'd share with you is how I think about my own check-in process with my inner circle. First of all, that inner circle doesn't have to be massive, by the way. It was funny. My friend Jane, someone asked us a question about, I only have really one best friend, and that best friend lives really far away on the other side of the world. Is that okay? Like, I almost feel bad. My boyfriend has all these best friends, and I have one. And Jane Park, my bestie, said, it only takes one. You only need one root. And I thought that was really lovely, that sentiment. So you could be the person that says, best friend's a tier, not a title. That's a Mindy Kalingism. So you have lots of best friends. Or you could be that person that has that one awesome human. And I think there's this piece of data that I love, that one-on-one interactions are actually the most treasured and valued in our minds. And so it only takes one. And I think with that one person, have a standing plan. And what I mean by that is you have to be in each other's lives with a specific rhythm. So one of my very closest friends who lives in New York, we're in the same age group, and neither of us have had kids yet. We have a standing plan where we always see each other Saturdays and Sunday mornings for a walk, a workout, a talk. It is not, and we don't want to spend money. To be clear, we're always like, we get invited to these really like brunches and then it's like $50 to $100 a person. We're like, no, we can run errands together. We can be each other's errands friends. We can go exercise together. But that's our once or twice a week friend date. And that means throughout the week when bad things happen, good things happen, we're always sharing with each other. She's also the person who's been on our podcast to talk about romantasy novels. So maybe half of that Saturday date is talking about the romantasy novels that we are reading. That's Mary Beth. The other thing that we do with our root friends is we are comfortable navigating harder feelings and being vulnerable with each other. And so I just want to share, I think with our root friends, those inner circle people, comparison will always creep in, whether it's career, kids, relationship. Life stages will evolve. Like one of my college friends who's had a kid and we've just drifted apart, but now we're drifting back together. Being left out. And this one's a really hard one because social media has made this worse. I always say, when you see your friends having fun without you, there is a real sting to it. And I think with our inner circle, we can talk about it. I think about that White Lotus. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen season 3 of White Lotus, what I'm about to say will absolutely give away a piece of what happened. So you can earmuffs for the next 90 seconds. But there's a great scene in season 3 with 3 childhood friends who've gone on vacation, 3 female childhood friends. And throughout the entire season, they're talking, 2 of them are talking about the other one behind their backs, or they're judging each other, or they're a little bit catty, they're competitive, they're super close. And I love Carrie Coon, the actress's monologue, where she says, my life is actually really bad right now. And the 3 of us carry so much history that I don't want to fight with you all anymore, because if I fight with all of you, what do I have left? And so I love the vulnerability that comes with this inner circle. So with all of the things that swirl around us, having those friends who are our root people, those are the people we can have meltdowns with and breakdowns with. And I think you've got to navigate those hard feelings together. So I thought I'd share with you an example of that with my inner circle. One of my friends who lives in New York, and we're kind of in each other's lives, is always doing something fabulous. And oftentimes I am not invited. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, I have not been invited, and they've gone to this amazing place and they've had this amazing meal, or they've gone to this great party, and why didn't they invite me? So first of all, I want to share that a lot of times we're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, you'll wave it away. And I will say, don't gaslight yourself. It is a big deal. Like, you are hurt, you're angry, you're sad, like all those feelings. Give yourself permission to feel them. And then I think the second question I always ask myself is there something that I've done? Like, have I over talked about how busy I am at work? Or am I never available? Have I never been available in the past when they have asked me to do something? Like, I do scan myself for is there something in a pattern where I've declined enough invitations where they're just okay, she's fallen off the list, or people forget sometimes. And in this specific instance, I actually brought it up with the friend. I said, hey, I hope you don't mind. I feel like we're close enough that we can talk about this, but there's all these fun things you all are doing, and I would love to join or be included if it makes sense. I get it if there's no room at the table or whatnot, but it's kind of sad sometimes when I'm not invited. I thought we were close enough, and you're doing some really cool things and fun things, and I want to go too. And what was interesting, the reaction, because there's one way where it's sort of you only pour into the people who are pour back into you, right? So there's one way that the person could have just dismissed it. Oh, no, we just didn't even know you were around. Totally get it. When we do fun things, we'll totally I'll have to remind myself to invite you, right? There's kind of a dismissive, in which case I would say that person may not value you as much as you value them. But in this case, the conversation went a different way. Oh my gosh, you are the busiest person on the planet, Lisa. I know you're juggling a gazillion things. I always think our plans are not important to bring to you. Are they a priority amongst taking care of your family and managing your company and traveling and doing all the things you have to do at work? I just know how much you need to rest. I didn't think you'd want to do that. Absolutely. But then I realized part of it was me. I was conveying something about how hard my life had become, that I had not nurtured that friendship enough. And so I think there are all these hard feelings that we navigate amongst our inner circle. And I think if you've ever felt excluded, if that person is in your inner circle, that's where you do have to have that conversation. And you should feel strong enough in a good place to do that with that person. So I want you to think about a few things. What's one friendship that energizes you right now and why? Because I think it's fun to remind ourselves around why we admire our friends. I just did Nikia Reviak's podcast, The Significance of Others, and she interviews best friends. And I just did an episode with my bestie, Jane Park, which was really fun because she does this exercise where at the end of the podcast, she says, okay, now I want you to talk to your best friend and say, I love you, Jane, because, and I want you to share something that you see in them that might almost make them uncomfortable or embarrassed. And I literally broke into tears telling Jane what I felt about her direct to camera. And she told me how she felt about me. And it just, it broke me open. I was so emotional when I did that podcast recording. What's one dynamic that feels heavy or confusing? And this is my whole point around, we have to take an inventory of our friendships the way we take an inventory about our careers or our romantic relationships. And the last question I would think we should ask ourselves is, what has your current circle taught you about the kind of friend you want to be? Because just like in our careers, we can all have progression in terms of what kind of friend we are to others. I want to leave you with one exercise as this last part. Maggie Palmer, who's a dear friend who's been on our podcast, her episode's amazing around how to ask for a raise or promotion. She does something which I love, which she calls wellness check. And her thing is every day, reach out to one person to let them know that you're thinking about them and you appreciate them. Now, Maggie takes it to the extreme in that she will text me just 2 words, wellness check, because she knows that's enough to trigger connection with me. And I love that she does that because it reminds me that I'm not alone in this world, that someone is thinking about me. And by the way, I'm thinking about them. So I look forward to hearing what you thought about this episode. I'm still navigating, actually, this is now 4 years later. I'm still navigating, recomposing the friendships in my life, the rhythms of my life. But more than anything, I'm taking stock of who I'm deeply grateful for, which friendships I can grieve and let go and be grateful for the time we did have, and finding in my 40s a way to make new friends at opportune moments in shared environments. I hope you love this episode of In Confidence. If you love this episode, please share it with a friend who needed to hear this today. I hope you're leaving this space stronger than when you came into it. Subscribe so you never miss a moment of inspiration. And until next time, in the words of my 9-year-old self, I see you, I value you, and I believe in you. This is In Confidence.